Honourable members, it is estimated that less than 30% of young people entering secondary schools in Barbados leave school with any useful qualification. Less than 30%. This is not only detrimental to our young people, but to our country. There are changes that need to be made. However, we cannot only rely on the advice from consultants who are not aware of how our system works. We need to include the main stakeholders, such as teachers, parents, students. The numbers will continue to decrease if we do not do something regarding the reform of our education system. One of the major issues being discussed as it relates to education reform is the curriculum. In particular, the fact that the current curriculum lacks real-world skills, such as time management and application of learned abilities in various situations. Often in schools, we are faced with the expectation of our young people to answer questions solely based on memory retention, which doesn't help develop critical thinking skills. Our education system needs a more inclusive curriculum, which takes into thought the diverse needs, previous experiences, personal characteristics, and interests of all learners. We also need to ensure that all students are provided equal opportunities and experiences despite any learning differences. Another issue we face today within our education system is the need for the implementation of continuous assessment along with standardized examination. Standardized examinations have been used in Barbados for over 30 years. But as times change, we need to recognize that it also could...
Honourable member, I'd just like to ask you to allow the member of the government side to just have a few more moments to concretize her statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member from government, continue.
We need to recognize that although the standardized examination is effective, there's also a series of issues that comes along with it. We need to take a look at the possibility of inaccuracy in these tests. Due to the high amounts of stress and pressure that are placed on students to perform to a certain high standard, pressure and stress compromise these students who face issues with their anxiety, especially when they're placed in situations where they're in a strange, unfamiliar environment.
Honourable member from the opposition, will you now make your statement? At what point do you raise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise on a point of order. The Honourable member is misleading the House, and she has several inaccuracies in her statements that she's laying here in this chamber. And she's speaking about inaccuracies of examinations on the day, but she, however, has come and spoken to the implementation of continuous assessments. And continuous assessments already exist. We have the criterion reference test done in Infants B and Class 2. We have the criterion reference test in social studies and integrated science in the primary school system done in Class 3. Please varnish yourselves with current affairs and the information of our system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable member. Honourable member from government, continue.
I'd like to thank the Honourable member for raising that point. However, I'd like to clarify that I was referring only to the common entrance examination. Continuing. These students cannot be assessed correctly because of these various situations that they're placed in. Strange environments, anxiety, stress. How are they supposed to be properly assessed? Continuous assessment helps students become aware of their own abilities and supports the idea of improving overall marks by focusing on their weaknesses. In our neighboring island, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, instead of the common entrance exams, students sat the CPEA, or Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment. Results showed an increase in overall pass rate by 22%. The results went from 55.74% during the use of the common entrance to 78.08% after implementing the use of the CPEA. Many schools in St. Vincent witnessed an increase in these pass rates. This is because the CPEA provides use of continuous assessment along with a final exam to determine a student's marks. We are not proposing to remove standardized examination entirely. We are asking to adopt a 60-40 ratio between on-the-day examinations and formative continuous assessment. We need to look at implementing a similar strategy to our neighbors. There's proof that lies within these statistics. This is a solution to a problem that we have right now. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we need to address some of the major problems within our education system, identify what is not working, and provide suitable solutions. Introducing a more inclusive curriculum would be a step in the right direction. But unfortunately, that is not our only issue, and we have many more topics that need to be discussed and addressed. Doing this could potentially create larger benefits for our young people. Not young people in Australia, not young people in North America, our own Barbadian young people. Creating a more generally inclusive curriculum and implementing continuous assessment along with the usual method of standardized examination are ways to help improve our system. We need to think about the future. What needs to be done to improve our current system? Building on what we already have, as well as contributing new ideas, we can provide a better future for the growth and well-being when it relates to the education of all students. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I oblige.
Thank you, Honourable Member Zara Spencer. Honourable Member from the Opposition, Maya Spooner, you now have the floor.
Members, Speaker, good afternoon. As I listen to my fellow oppositions on this side, as well as the government, it is clear that we all understand the importance of education. It's like oxygen. We need oxygen to breathe, and we need education to survive. Even though members on the other side understand the importance of education, there are some who haven't fully grasped the ramifications of poor education policies, which can affect current and future generations. How can we be properly or completely be educated if there are issues in the educational system that need to be addressed? Much emphasis is placed on math, English, and the sciences. And when it comes to the non-traditional subjects such as history, social studies, Spanish, etc., not much importance or value is placed on these disciplines. These forgotten areas add flavor and spice to life. If everyone aspires to be a doctor or a lawyer, how can other roles in society be filled? For instance, we need to eat, so we need farmers to produce crops. We need to wear clothes, so we need tailors to make clothes. We have architects and engineers, which build our homes, cars, and other technologies. And according to the Prime Minister of Barbados in a press conference in January 2022, if Barbados is to be a confident nation with confident people, it will require a change in the way that we educate our children, end quote. That is why it is important and integral that we introduce non-traditional subjects for our human development. For that reason, it is important to understand that every child has different learning styles, different challenges and personalities. For example, a child who is a visual or a tactile learner, based on this, a teacher will provide a lesson based on this learning style, and the teacher will bring in 5 apples and tell the child to take away 2, instead of blatantly telling the child 5 take away 2 is 3. Another aspect to add to the education policy is adding diagnostic testing. This allows the teachers to identify and be made aware of the issues that students may have, such as dyslexia or ADHD, just to name a few. So teachers will know how to instruct their lesson in the way that they can deliver their information in a comprehensible and impactful manner. Diagnostic testing should be tested in various stages in a child's educational life, as not all students manifest issues right away. In order to have educational treatment and education of students, as well as creating a more inclusive curriculum, we need to ensure that our teachers are ready and equipped for these changes. We need to make sure that our teachers are ready and willing to continuously improve the way that they teach. That is why teachers should be provided with a teacher's plan, and by this teacher's plan, they would instruct their lesson based on the class that they have, as well as feedback. Feedback ensures that the delivery of information is clear and impactful as possible. Teaching isn't just academics. It involves the emotional side as well, and that is important too. Teachers should have a basic understanding in social psychology as well as child and adolescent psychology. This would help the teachers develop methods and strategies in order to have a great lesson, whether it is visual, kinetically, or audio, and much more. We need to be more particular with the teachers that we choose, as there are several teachers with negative attitudes and only care about the money and copious amount of vacation. So that's why it is crucial that we select teachers who are genuine and kind and have a love for teaching. Thank you, and I am obliged to you.
Further making a correction in relation to the Alexandra School, it is their head of department present, not their deputy principal. I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge the presence and the wisdom and the experience of our judges, Ms. Sophia Skeet, Ms. Gloria Haynes, and Mr. Ronald Bullen. We give a tremendous amount of thanks for the amount of work that you've put in ensuring that we arrive at this level and then soar even higher. And we hope that even as the proceedings continue, we are all marked fairly. Next, the member of government.
Mr. Speaker, Honourable
Ms. Kayla Boyce, you now have the floor.
Sorry. Mr. Speaker, Honourable members, colleagues, good afternoon. The youth of Barbados are the future, so let's focus on them. Change needs to happen with the education system. Children are not learning and understanding material that is taught. Let's all just give that a thought. Before I begin speaking about my points, I'm going to stress to us why education reform is so important. Every human being that is born has amazing potential, but they can never fully utilize that potential if a human does not have access to a high-quality education or the correct technologies that will help connect a person to valuable knowledge and information. Potential starts with the human mind. Every bit of valuable information a person can store in their memories increases their potential. Education is a human right, and high-quality education needs to be a top priority. I know we've talked about education reform for a long time. I know. But let's not make this another one of those times. Let's stop talking the talk and let us finally walk the walk. And the first step to doing so is by providing solutions, which the government has provided in this resolution. Now, there are a lot of solutions, but the one I shall be focusing on is CPD programs. Now, what is CPD? Continuous professional development. Continuous professional development is the processes and learning activities that professionals undertake to enhance their skills, knowledge, expertise, and competence. It records what professionals learn, experience, and apply in their...
Honourable member, at what point do you raise?
I stand on a point of order. The other side made it clear that I was reading, but I would also like to make it clear that their member is reading. Her phone is in her hand, and she's very clearly reading, looking up and down at every sentence. So may I please ask that she stops reading?
Thank you, Honourable member of the opposition. A reminder to the House, you may refer to your notes, but please do not refer to them copiously.
Thank you. I will continue. Instead of being reactive and passive, teachers who engage in continuous professional development become passive and apply the newly acquired skills in their fields. In continuous professional development programs, they do things such as workshops, online training, or e-learning courses. I would now like to explain the importance of CPD programs for teachers. Number one, they can equip their students for the future. Let's change it. The future and technology is rapidly changing every single day, and the students of today will need to be equipped with the necessary skills to deal with this world, such as new technical skills, people skills. And teachers play a crucial role in preparing their students for that brave new world. Number two, they can discover new teaching strategies. With continuous professional development, teachers discover new teaching strategies and ways. This also helps them identify their students' needs and apply the necessary strategies to deal with them. This also gives them the opportunity to identify their own struggles and issues and improve and change their style to be more effective. And number three, contribute to better student outcomes. CPD allows teachers to be up to date with the latest trends and the best practices in their field. It also helps them in crafting personalized and practical lessons for their students. Like I stated before, it's not like CPD programs do not exist in Barbados. They do. It's just that they're not heard about a lot. And what we need to do is improve the programs that have already been implemented by approaching them with different and new effective ways. Now, how to make CPD programs effective for teachers? Number one, keep them invested and engaged. We have heard about how students learn things differently, but teachers also learn things differently. Some teachers might be visual learners, or they might learn better by taking notes. So we should try to use various methods while conducting these programs and observe the engagement level and the interest of the educators to make sure that they are also invested and engaged. And number three, create personalized programs for them if possible.
Honourable member, at what point do you raise?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I read in the point of order, sir. The member is still reading, and if she continues, the opposition document the House, please. Thank you.
Honourable member of government, will you be willing to make the notes that you refer to a document of the House?
Yes, please.
Okay, continue to refer to the notes briefly. Please do not continuously read from it. This is a discussion of the House, and we'd love to hear you speak to us, not the phone. Thank you very much. Continue.
Yes, thank you. I will start reading from the House, but I would just also like to state before I continue, I have statistics after this, so I will be referencing to my notes. Continuing on.
Thank you.
Number three, create personalized programs for them if possible. We can try and get in touch with different teachers and ask them different questions that influence their job, such as the class they teach, the subjects they teach, and if they're happy with their current job position. I'm now reading some statistics. More than 80% of teachers report that their training had a positive effect on their teaching practices. The characteristics of training those teachers found most impactful are those based on strong subject and curriculum content.
Honourable member,
Collaboration.
you have 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you. I'm wrapping up. Collaboration and incorporation of active learning and collaborative approaches to instruction. I got all of this information from the OECD. Once again, I'm about to read a quote. Mahatma Gandhi said that the future depends on what we do in the present. So let us make a change now so we can shape our future to be a bright and successful one. Before I finally conclude, I would like to briefly repeat the importance of CPD for teachers. Number one, they can help equip their students for the future. Number two, they can discover new teaching strategies. And number three, it can help contribute to better student outcomes. In conclusion, I strongly support this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I oblige to you.
Thank you, Honourable Member of Government. At this point in time, I would like to ask Honourable Member Sarit Barker from the opposition to please take the floor.
Honourable Mr. Speaker, sir, honourable members, invited guests, I rise to speak on the topic of educational reform today. Prior to independence, yes, we need to go back to where it all began, because this educational system that we have today is inherited. It's not ours, it's inherited. It's a part of our colonial legacy. Prior to independence, colonial education system sought to reinforce social and economic hierarchies, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. The education has been used time and time again to maintain the status quo, to keep the working class as the working class, and to ensure the elevation of a select few. We need to make sure that we don't do the same in post-independent Barbados. Mr. Speaker, the resolution speaks to the creation of a more inclusive curriculum and that all students and subjects are treated equally. Mr. Speaker, that blatantly ignores the fact that education has been a vehicle to the creation of a productive workforce. Mr. Speaker, that blatantly ignores the fact that there's a clear demarcation in the treatment of certain professions within the society. Mr. Speaker, I am talking about the difference in the treatment between the sanitation worker and the doctor. And don't tell me that it doesn't exist, because I see it every day. I am talking about the difference, Mr. Speaker, between the barber and the lawyer within the society. I am speaking of the difference between the carpenter, Mr. Speaker, and the politician within the society. Mr. Speaker, classism and capitalism pervade our society, but yet we expect our educational system to be free of it, be free of this poison. How? How? School is not a simulation, Mr. Speaker. It will reflect the real world. We cannot advocate for skills on one hand because it sounds good. It sounds great to say. It sounds perfect, actually. Yeah, we can open vocationals, we can open skills training. People can go there and learn skills and then contribute back to society. But no, that's not how it's been working. No, it has not been working like that. Mr. Speaker, for an inclusive curriculum, we beg for inclusive curriculum, then surround skills with negative connotations. Mr. Speaker, sir. Skills should not be seen as for less academic students or students who do not excel in academia. Mr. Speaker, sir, your inability to grasp chemistry should not consign you to poverty. Mr. Speaker, sir, here in Barbados, if you are taking up a skill, is almost as if it's the last resort, or you're taking this up because you have not been able to attain certain certificates. Mr. Speaker, I do not agree with that. Mr. Speaker, I cannot. It is burdensome upon me. Everybody cannot be academically inclined. Further, me being academically inclined should not prevent me from accessing skills training. But these are societal realities, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I'll leave you for example, the greatest of them all. A couple of years ago, I would have attended an institution here in Barbados, and I would call the name. I'm not so kind as my honourable member. I'm calling names here. I remember a couple of years ago when I was in attendance at Harrison College. Also attended there was an absence of food and nutrition, a food and nutrition program. Yes, you're hearing me clearly. Food and nutrition, everyone in here eats, right? Yeah. And it was at that point, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it became clear to me that society didn't need any chef. Society only needs scientists. Mr. Speaker, sir, in one breath, the resolution speaks to all students being treated equally. And in the next, proposes the greater adoption of technology within the system. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today to say that technology, the further implementation of technology within this system would only serve to further widen the gap between the poor student and the rich student. And I'll explain what I mean too. I like to get down to examples, raw stats, that kind of way. I am talking about the gap that meant little Johnny couldn't get the additional lessons he needed to develop, or the breakfast he required before school so he could focus well. Melvin's family was able to provide the necessary support. So it's not everybody's problem. So we don't see it as one. The gap.
Member, at one point do you raise?
I raise on a point of order. This honourable member is misleading the House. If I recall correctly, one of our honourable members on the government side spoke earlier today to that point about the technology gap. And she clearly stated just how that gap is closer to being closed than ever. So, honourable member, I ask that you refrain from misleading this honourable chamber.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Before you continue, honourable member, you have 2 minutes, but I'll allow you a couple more seconds as well.
Mr. Speaker. No, I raised to comment, I wanted to rebut that earlier point, but I hadn't spoken as yet, so I was quite unable. But I will clarify now. No, these are real examples. The thing the pandemic showed us that the gap is very much alive and well. The gap has not been bridged. The gap has only been widened. Every day we see advancements in technology. The pockets of certain Barbadian students is not advancing. The cost of living is rising. Okay, so to continue on though, that was just in response. Continuing on. The gap meant that during the pandemic in Barbados, some students were unable to access an E-type of learning due to lack of devices. No Wi-Fi. I could go on. Mr. Speaker, sir. And that is not to say that technology is all bad, but we see the direction the world is headed. But emphasis must be placed on equality of opportunity and not keeping up with the proverbial Joneses. Talking about Finland and Singapore. This is Barbados. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, for equity to be achieved, circumstances should not be obstacles to educational success. And you said you have 2 minutes, so I'll wrap up fast. Get in there, Mr. Speaker, sir. You can see that you can tell I'm passionate. Mr. Speaker, sir, despite not being in agreement with a greater step towards technology within the system, that is not to say that I am not in support of the present. I am not in support of the present chalk and taught. These methods are outdated. Teachers need to be cognizant of the various learning profiles within the classroom, as well as learning preferences and learning challenges faced by students. Some children might require visual aids, some children might require movies, some children audio. Instead of catering to specific needs, there's an overemphasis, Mr. Speaker, sir, on content coverage. We want to rigidly adhere to syllabi and time frames. So instead, the emphasis is placed on teaching the curriculum instead of teaching the child. Mr. Speaker, sir, I found it unbelievable when I recently discovered that teachers weren't mandated to continue their development. Mr. Speaker, whatever Ida may learned 30 years ago, unless she is keen on her own development, I am suggesting that she's going to teach that 30 years today, 30 years from now, if she'd be so lucky. And that should not be, Mr. Speaker. I am suggesting that teachers' continuous development be mandatory and that all teachers should have to go to regular workshops. Mr. Speaker, the resolution also speaks to the integration of pupils with special needs into the mainstream school system.
Honourable member, your time is now completed. Thank you for your passionate delivery, but Parliament must continue. Please have a seat. Thank you
I am
very
much
much.
obliged, sir.
The Honourable Member from Government, Leanna Griffith, you now have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, honorable members of the House. Now, we are here today to discuss education reform. What is education? Education is a process of training, development of knowledge, skills, mind, and character. Now, education is a precious commodity which must be dealt with precisely and delicately. Education shapes the future of this country. Therefore, we must ditch traditional learning. Every day, we take a step closer to diversity in this world. Every day, we as humans mature. Why has the education system failed to evolve throughout the years? The education system is the building blocks of life, or what we like to call the building blocks of life. This is where we lay the foundation of life. Therefore, there must be implemented structures which aid in the acquisition of lifelong knowledge and perpetual skills. For example, why do we have students who leave secondary school and graduate without knowledge of knowing how to do an NAS, filing for taxes, signing up for a bank account, knowing how to sign up for loans, etc.? This is simply unacceptable. Now, if you would take a look at the resolution, last section, subsection A, which states, the creation of a more inclusive curriculum which promotes lifelong learning, teaches essential skills which are critical for our life in the real world, and provides freedom of education for our students whose passions lie in the pursuit of non-traditional subjects. Now, Mr. Speaker, I propose that we implement not only money management classes, which help students learn how to budget in everyday life, but we also need to implement a credit card scheme in secondary schools. Why do we train students in believing that as soon as you leave secondary school, you're now an adult, going to the adult world? We have taught you nothing in aiding day-to-day life in the adult world, but go into the adult world. With this credit card scheme, it implements structure and teaches students responsibility, wise decision-making as well, in where to spend their money, where to invest, how to not spend their money, what should they invest their money into, etc. For example, the Barbados Thrift Club. They are very successful in this. And this can also help students in earning like points, merit, stuff like that in secondary schools, depending on how they do in schools. Now, my second suggestion would be talent development classes as well. As we all know, every student is not a STEM student, and some students need a little push in their talents. Now, we will implement music, culinary arts, architecture, cosmetology, arts and craft, woodwork, metalwork, and provide accredited certificates for such. We all cannot be doctors, lawyers, or nurses, and we all know this. So this is why implementing the talent development classes would be very essential to our tertiary education system. Thirdly, I would like to propose an entrepreneurship scheme in schools where we would grant the capital to students with a 10% interest rate which goes back into the school system. Now, these three suggestions that I previously stated would be incorporated into the HFLE programs in schools. Because let's face it, HFLE is not a subject which is seriously acknowledged in schools. Well, I'm not sure about your secondary schools, but mine. And this entrepreneurship scheme would better teach students how to sell, because as we know, you can't sell snacks in secondary schools. And this is an issue that I find, very dear to my heart and I'm very passionate about, because why do we confiscate students' resources? Why do we confiscate students' goods and candy and snacks like that? We should instead support what they aspire to be. Because okay.
Honourable member, at what point do you raise?
I stand on a point of order. The honourable member has clearly lost her way in her notes, and she does not appear to be reading any quotes or academic articles or studies. I please ask that she stop reading.
Honourable member from the government, will you be willing to make your notes accessible to the chambers? Continue to refer to your notes, but please, again, as a reminder, do not copiously read or completely refer to your notes. They are a guiding point from which you will then speak, but do not read it verbatim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you as well. Continuing, this entrepreneurship scheme would better build students in the knowledge of knowing how to better have their own businesses during school. Because instead of confiscating their goods, as I stated previously, this shows them, students don't come from the same background. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. And not every student is able to get school money and certain stuff like that. So when you confiscate their goods, which they obviously saved to purchase in schools, this not only shows lack of support.
Honourable member, at what point do you raise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise on a point of order. I can no longer sit down and continue to watch the honourable member mislead this House time after time after time from the contributions that she's laid in this House, from the entrepreneurship scheme that she's alluding to don't existing, to encouraging illegal activities in the school-based environment.
Just a slight correction there. In her relation to that particular part, it was about entrepreneurship schemes within schools, not the overall youth entrepreneurship scheme.
Mr. Speaker, there are entrepreneurship schemes within schools. There is a $20 challenge that has existed for more than 6 years in this country. There's also a grave concern, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member continues to slavishly follow her notes, but then she is delivering ill information to the citizens of Barbados. That is ill will to the people. And I will ask the honourable member that when she comes to the House, that the eye contact that she makes with us on the other side be one of just and reasonable measure, because she's looking at us wizzy-wizzying when we're trying to literally tell her, like, please make sure that she's giving credible information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. First of all, I would not encourage you to distract the honourable member as she is giving her speech. Second of all, it is important that we understand that there is a measure of respect that we should have for each member of the Youth Parliament of Barbados. When we bring our ideas to this table, we not just represent our own particular thoughts, but imagine some other student who is not present in this particular chambers mirroring that thought. Respect should be shown across the board. Honourable member, as this is your first time being in this chambers, and I welcome your participation. It's been a good effort. Please do not continue to refer from your notes going forward. Carry on smartly.
Honourable member, I would urge the opposition that when you stand on a point of order, please have some substance and logic to your points. Now, as I previously stated, the entrepreneurship scheme needs to be implemented more accessible in schools. I am not sure which school you went to, but it was not at mine. Now, as I continue, this scheme needs to be more advertised, and it trains students who aspire to be entrepreneurs how it is better structured. The three of my suggestions shall be implemented into the HFLE programs in secondary schools, and it helps students in knowing lifelong skills. Thank you very much. I am obliged to you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member of the Opposition. Dante Harvey. Honourable Member, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, honourable members. I rise today to make a viable contribution to this debate on education reform. But, sir, first, before I begin, I'm hearing the other members on that side mentioning the teachers, sir. And once again, I raise this document, the Education Act. If you want to implement it for the teachers, you must implement it for yourself. You must implement it for the workers of the Ministry of Education, sir. But keep on moving forward. Having an education reform committee, our Ministry of Education, who lacks vision, who lacks the ability to make change, but only to copy another broken system, will be detrimental for me, those in the gallery, and those to come. Mr. Speaker, we are more focusing on the formal factor of education, the curriculum. Sir, what about the informal, the Girl Guides Association, the Barbados Cadet Corps, the Red Cross, the aspects that are teaching our young people the social and soft skills of life, sir? Sir, we need to integrate and balance these stuff into our school system, that when a child learns maths and English, they also learn how to cook on the outside, sir. Cadets has taught me that. Sir, we need not to only focus on maths, English, social studies, sir, but we need to focus on life and what is beyond the school. A lady by the name, I don't want to call her name, but she alluded to something and I agree. The school in St. George, Constant to be exact, is on the right, sir. The St. George Secondary School has shown persons that although you are not smart enough to attend the old schools, we can produce farmers. We can produce carpenters, we can produce masons, sir. That is the model in which we need to follow, and that is the model in which the government of the day, the government of Barbados, the Minister of Education, the Chief Education Officer needs to follow, sir. Sir, I was trying not to go that far into calling out persons in my speech, sir, but it has to happen. This is a serious matter, sir. We are here today to debate education reform in Barbados. Our voices need to be heard. Whether we're government or opposition, the government of the day, the Ministry of Education needs to take young person's voice and to take it into consideration. We are stakeholders of education, sir. We are the pillars of education.
Order. Continue.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the stakeholders of education are the persons who sit in the Ministry of Education for a day and do not answer the phone. The stakeholders are the persons who teach. The stakeholders are the children who go to school. Mr. Speaker, would you believe that a teacher in secondary school has to buy a white marker? I can't believe it. But then when you go through the estimates, funds are allocated to foolishness. Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, I can behave, Mr. Speaker. But I can't. This is a serious matter, sir. Sir, if the teachers has lost faith in the government, the children will get teach bad, sir. Sir, if the government does not communicate with our teachers, the children will get teach bad, sir. Sir, we sit And we hear all these press conferences on education and what the ministry is doing. But sir, when you ask the teacher, y'all had input in that, they went and had a meeting. So how can a minister in their right mind sit and say we have communicated with everyone? Sir, it's like the resolution. The government communicate with the opposition. Sir, the government ain't communicate with the opposition and bring fluff before you and before this honorable chamber, sir. Sir, I am proud because in another place the word revamped was used. And today they not hear it, so I'm proud. The government has understand that the system is broken and the system needs to be fixed. Sir, this system does not need no, as the government does do, put thing one thing because something working. They got to fix what is not working before you add something else. And that is why this education system is the way it is today, because governments after governments have added before they fix. Sir, governments after governments...
Honourable member, you have 1 minute.
Sir, that's all I need. Sir, governments after governments...
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Sir, governments after governments have neglected the church girls and boys brigades that build the foundation of social skills among us, sir. Sir, governments after governments have neglected the small man, sir. Sir, when school was to be online, sir, it's subject to correction. You know, sometimes we make mistakes. Government acted because the private schools made noise in front of government headquarters, but they did not act when the public schools made a point, sir. Sir, we have to stop with this foolishness. Sir, you calm down. You can't use incorrect language in the house. Sir, if public schools in Barbados can follow the mantra of the private schools, the education system will be good. Sir, in closing, sir, private schools in Barbados, along with the St. George Secondary School, have outshined schools like Harrison College, the famous Combermere School, the Lodge School, sir. Sir, these schools have tradition of weeks, but those schools have tradition and legacy to move on. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for that spirited presentation. I'd now like to ask Member of the Government, Elisha Eiffel, you now have the floor.
I would like to begin by saying that I am very grateful to be here. This is a matter that is very dear to my heart, being that I have seen my mother and my father work closely in this field, my grandmother. My mother was a volunteer with NCSA, the National Council on Substance Abuse, and they went into schools and they would have taught on different aspects that is very similar to what the HFLE program would be like. They talk on drugs, substance abuse. They talk on violence, domestic violence. I would have seen my mother pull some students aside to speak to them because of the impact that it was having on them. And I had my own input, but now I am very grateful to be here to have the opportunity to lend a voice to this national topic. I also know that after working with the NCSA, my mother would have moved and she would have went to Partners That Care International. This is an organization that provides educational opportunities and academic opportunities for students that are more musically inclined. I believe that this is a good example of what we are seeking to do and what this resolution is seeking and proposing that we do. How we move forward, I believe that we must not only implement this system for musically inclined students, but I believe that we should continue to add additional classes in the HFLE program, which is what I am mainly speaking on today, in terms of money management, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and intrapreneurship, understanding the difference between intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship. All of these are things that I believe should be taught in our schools. Yes, I understand that one of the major concerns with educational reform is that we have been in this system so long, it's going to cost a lot to fix. But I would like to take a quote from a well-known author and lecturer, Andy Hargreaves, and he says, "A successful school has to engage all the people, all the powers, and all the capabilities within it. We are not only going to talk to the students about it, but we're going to talk to the teachers about it. We are going to talk to the janitors, the school meal workers." My grandmother was a school meal worker. And as a school meal worker, and me, I would have went with her on certain occasions to school, and I would have seen her having more respect. The students have more respect sometimes for the school meal worker than the actual teacher. And why is that? It's because she showed that same respect to them. What was given was received. As it comes to funding these proposals and these motions to go forward, I believe that we need to utilize the educational grants that are out there. Yes, it may be costly, but the fact is that we cannot afford to continue to allow the talent that Barbados is producing to leak into other people's economies, other countries' economies. I think that we need to create a system that encourages our students to stay here, and encourages the citizens of Barbados to continue to contribute to Barbados, developing Barbados. And that is
Member, I believe you are an able and strapping young man, and you can project your voice. Kindly stand and address the House chambers. Great remarks so far. I'd like you to continue in confidence. You go ahead, sir.
One such grant that we could utilize is the KLI grant, the Knowledge, Learning, and Innovation grant. This grant can be offered this grant is offered from the US, it's US based, but it's offered to many countries, and the grant amount can go up to a US $1 million, which honestly would do a lot for some of the smaller programs that we already have. I do believe and I agree that we do have programs that reach out to certain aspects in certain areas, but like my colleagues would have said, I believe that there is a lack of awareness of such programs. Accessibility. There are some programs, like what have been said earlier, there are some programs that are available in other schools that are not available other places. And like was said again, sometimes it has to do with the fact that we have schools that we depend on to produce a certain caliber of student, or a certain type of student. And we do not take into consideration that other schools have something to contribute. I believe that if we were to sit down and we were to have meetings, have deliberations with the teachers, people that would have worked in the education system, who, like me.
Honourable Member, at what point do you raise?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand on a point of order. The honourable member is misleading this. The honourable member is misleading this house. He said that the educational system here was dependent upon certain schools to produce the quota, whilst not paying attention to some of the other schools. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the problem here is not that there's a reliance on certain schools to fill the quota. I can highlight Springer, for example, and St. Leonard's, where every Saturday, these schools are burst the brim. So this suggested elitism is misleading. Because I went on to say, I really want to add that.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member from the government side, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Okay, I am wrapping up now. I would like to say that, yes, sometimes I don't wish to retract my statement, first off. I would like to say that we do depend on certain schools, and we do depend on certain qualifications that may not necessarily be, certain qualifications that may not necessarily give rise or clearly identify certain traits. We have such programs, yes, in all schools. We have woodwork programs in all schools, but some schools do it a little better. And that's what I meant by we depend on certain schools to produce certain students. For example, we have this, we would not expect, you don't hear certain, if I come and I talk a certain way, you wouldn't expect me to be from somewhere. And that is not a problem. That is not a problem that we highlight very often, but I feel like that stigma needs to be taken away from schools. I feel like to go back and take my little time remaining, I'll go back and go back to the money management. I believe that money management, like my partner would have said, money management, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, all these things should be taught on a broader basis. Access to these type of programs should be quicker and more available. The advertisement and the incorporation of it into our school system, not outside programs, but into our actual school system, the actual system that we are seeking to change here, should be recognized. We take a lot of time in school, and I feel like some of the time that we take in school, that students spend in school, should be dedicated to this area. And with that, I oblige.
Thank you, member from the government. Member from the opposition, Mr. Alexander O'Neill, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to be here, and I thank you for giving me time to share my thoughts on this debate. We are here to discuss education reform, and the resolution that the government brought before us attempts to do that. But I honestly think it falls short of that objective, Mr. Speaker. In 1996, the then leader of the Labour Party and former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the Right Honourable Tony Blair, said at the annual conference that he has 3 top priorities: education, education, education. Another quote that is associated with Mr. Blair is, education is the best economic policy. Education must be employed by...
Just one moment, honorable member. I'd like to again encourage everyone, please have your phone on silent or turn it off. This is a process in which democracy is taking place, and I'd like encourage everyone to have the utmost respect for the process of Parliament and have your phones on silent. Thank you so much. Continue, Minister from Opposition.
Education must be employed by the state to create wealth for the state and the individual. In that light, this resolution lacks the strategic objectives in doing so, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the solutions of this resolution are not substantive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the solutions that they also provide are solutions that are already implemented in the current education system, Mr. Speaker. So what has been added, Mr. Speaker? Nothing, Mr. Speaker. In addition, this resolution has no financial structure to fund these solutions. Whenever a government is serious about solving a problem, it has to fold into its plan a financing system. And if these solutions are to manifest themselves, where is the money coming from, Mr. Speaker? I would like to recommend some solutions to this resolution. And one of my recommendations are establishing endowment funds for the educational institutions. Some may ask, what is an endowment fund? An endowment fund is a portfolio of cash flow or non-cash flow assets. Equally, why an endowment fund? An endowment fund can supplement expenditure that government has already allocated to these educational institutions. In the year of 2022, the estimates state that the non-statutory and statutory estimates for this year is $570 million for the Ministry of Education, Mr. Speaker. That may seem like a lump sum of money, but really and truly, that is not efficient to properly finance these institutions and the accessory organs of them, Mr. Speaker. Equally, if these endowment funds are successful or returns are high enough, they could equally reduce the expenditure burden on central government, Mr. Speaker. How would these funds be capitalized? Government can initiate these funds with $10,000 of seed capital. That would equate to about $1 million. And that would be 105 schools across Barbados. That's secondary, primary, and nursery, and the special needs schools that have the programs that they say that don't exist, Mr. Speaker. Managing these funds. There should be an expenditure freeze for at least 5 years to give these funds at least some time to grow before any sort of liquidation. In addition to government financing as well, the private sector also has a role to play. They can generously contribute to these funds and benefit from a tax break. In addition to the private sector, you also have alumni and parents. It doesn't matter how small the contribution can be. It doesn't matter how small the contribution is. All would be welcome, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned before about the expenditure freeze for 5 years, within that 5-year period, the schools or whoever management is appointed to manage these funds would embark on an investment journey in equity investments and debt investments. Because of the nature of these funds, you want safety. You want safety and you want stability. Given that, there is New York, there is London, there is Singapore financial markets that give us that credibility, that safety, and high yield that is necessary for these funds, Mr. Speaker. Equally, there is domestic financing as well. With these funds, the government can borrow and also invest back into the same educational policy. How is that? How is that, Mr. Speaker? When the management of these...
You have 2 minutes remaining.
When the management of these funds go about embarking on their investments, they can buy government bonds, the same government bonds that finance the government actions, can then invest in the same education institutions. Then at the same time, the education institutions benefit from interest payments paying back to them. So they benefit on both sides. Direct investment to the institution and also interest payments back to them. So that's a win-win scenario for these institutions, Mr. Speaker. After the first 5 years have elapsed, Mr. Speaker, they would set a target of 5% liquidation of the total fund. So to add to the allocated financing that government has already allocated for the institutions. Equally, there must be a growth target of more than 5% so that when the 5% liquidation annually going forward, that the fund is not depleted over the time period. So you would have to ensure that there's a return of equal to 5%, which would equate to a break even, or more than 5%, which would ensure growth in these funds, Mr. Speaker. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. That was a well thought out and comprehensive economic or financial approach to the solutions. At this point in time, I would like to ask Ms. Trinity Weeks from the government to please take the floor.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, good morning. Good afternoon, thank you.
I am glad that we all can sit here today and notice that education reform needs change. Today I'm talking about, my main topic is about financial literacy, being more into the educational system. Persons might ask, why should financial literacy be a part of the educational system? That ties in with the meaning of financial literacy. Financial literacy is the ability to understand and efficiently use various types of financial skills. For instance, personal money management, budgeting, saving, and investing. It's basically the relationship that we have with money. And we can all say today that some of us don't have a good relationship with money as we think. We get it in our hands, we are quick to spend it. We're not quick to sit down and say, well, let me look forward to the future. Let me look to see what the future holds. Why? Why financial literacy should be implemented in schools? The lack of knowledge and the consequences. Persons don't know that when they have debt and they die, their debt don't die. Their debt is still there. Then their family has to take on the responsibility of paying off that debt, which is something very serious. If you don't know these things,
Leader of the opposition, at what point do you raise?
Sir, I raise on a point of order. I believe that the honorable member is misleading the House just a little bit with this whole thing about debt doesn't die. Just the other day, a gentleman told me that a certain company, his mother died and left debt with that company, and they wanted him to pay. But the debt did die. He took that debt certificate to the company and said, look, I don't know who paying this, but it ain't me. And that debt was killed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member of Government, would you like to retract your statement?
no, please, move forward. Let's leave people. Also, another problem with financial literacy should be implemented is the fact that persons don't file for insurance. Persons depend on NIS, and I understand that persons after they get their paycheck, they say, well, my money already taken out for NIS. I don't need to go and look for I don't need to go and look for a private insurance, which is the fault of many. We don't go and look for private insurance. We depend so much on national insurance. The percentage of persons not knowing about financial literacy is more than 50% in Barbados. And my source is Professor Dwayne Devonish. He conducted surveys, and this was a sample. 50%, more than 50% do not know financial literacy. And that's not fair, that's not right. If you don't know how to spend your money, you're going to be doing so much things. You're going to be buying a car, all sort of things. You're not going to be studying saving, investing, these things that matter in the long run. Another point is 2.7% of persons 2.7% persons have life insurance in Barbados. This source is from the Barbados Advocate. 2.7%, that is not good. Where's the at least 50%? 2.7% is little. That should be saying a lot. A lot of persons don't know how to file for insurance. This is why financial literacy needs to be taught in schools. When? Classes should start in primary school. I say this because persons might be like, why does a primary school child need to learn financial literacy? If a primary school child doesn't know how to count money, how are they going to spend the money? I'm not blaming anyone. When they go to a snack vendor, they don't know if that person is giving them back the right change. They are not sure if this person is giving them back the right change. This can also work by using the basic mathematics skills. This can work with taking mathematics from inside the classroom and putting it outside. Secondary schools can learn it as a basic right to life in health and family life sessions. It can be learned because finances is life. Programs for tertiary levels can go more in depth than it would in secondary and primary schools, like teaching persons how to file for a private insurance like Sagicor, teaching persons how to save, teaching persons how to budget their money, how to spend their money, and making classes more interesting for children because a lot of children don't have the attention span like some of us might. So not making the classes long and boring. Also to my closing, if we fail to prepare for our youth to fail. And I do not want our youth to be failing because they did not know or they were not told how to budget their money. I don't want them to look back and be like, oh, nobody told me about filing for private insurance. Nobody taught me these stuff. I don't want children to be like that. So it's time for a change. With this matter, I am finished.
Thank you, Honourable Member from Government. Just a quick reminder, in terms of sourcing, ensure that the sources that you use come from academic or economic sources. While you had great speech alignment and good causation and whatnot, ensure that your sources are strong. Member from the opposition.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a topic that is very dear to my heart.
Caleb Brathwaite. Just for the record, Caleb Brathwaite, you now have the floor.
More time.
2 seconds. Continue.
Good afternoon again. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a topic that is very dear to my heart, that of educational reform. And we as a society must recognize that the time is right for educational reform and we must not let it pass. Mr. Speaker, on the onset, I want it to be known. I left secondary school with 6 CXCs. I then went to BCC and obtained an associate degree in law as well as government and political studies. I'm currently in my final year to obtain a bachelor's degree in law. And not once has the height of my hair or the style in which I wear it affected my learning ability. And people within the educational sector must understand that. Why must I cut my hair to learn? It must not go on. And I was forced to cut my hair. Not once. We must become emancipated from mental slavery and rid ourselves from that colonial mindset. Mr. Speaker, the opposition proposes that diagnostic testing be administered at the reception level because we must see if a child is suffering from dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD, and is at that critical juncture, we must test for that. The opposition also seeks to propose that soft and social skill teaching be done from first to second form because that research shows is that this preteen level where a child undergoes many physical and cognitive changes that you want to instill such traits. And let it be known that soft and social skill teaching is only done at the St. George Secondary School, and it must be widespread. Mr. Speaker, to effectively, and I stress on effectively, reform the educational system within Barbados, the combinations exam should go. It should not remain. But the opposition do not make such statements lightly, and in that respect, the alternative would be building on the current criteria reference tests in place and implementing a 3-year assessment period started in Class 2, ending in Class 4, in which students will undergo a series of tests, testing academia, testing vocational subjects, as well as testing physical subjects, as the opposition recognizes we must harness the talent of young people. Mr. Speaker, the opposition also thought it necessary that in terms of testing a child's physical abilities so that we can make more outstanding citizens like Shade Williams, Garfield Sobers. And to that extent, government must move full steam ahead and apply these changes. The rationale behind the thinking of the opposition is not to get rid of a test. You understand that tests are throughout life. What we are saying is to get rid of a test that is done once and seek to determine a child's future. We must reimagine secondary school education in this country. And to that extent, backed by the results of the criteria reference tests, that would help with the allocation to secondary school. Mr. Speaker, the current allocation to secondary school is not the entire problem because the opposition recognizes that not everyone can learn at the same pace. We understand that. Mr. Speaker, I, for one, in primary school, at my primary school, there's 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, and 4-4. I was not in 4-1. I wasn't even in 4-2. I was in 4-3, and it was because at that level, I was learning at a different pace to others, and look where I am today. Mr. Speaker, it therefore comes down to an all-society approach, getting rid of the stigmatization on where you go or where you went to school. It can no longer happen in this country. The opposition recognizes that it's not...
Order, the member is still making his statement. Continue.
The opposition recognizes that it's not an overnight approach, but he can who tries. Mr. Speaker, let it be known this is not to signal the opposition's support for the current structure and curriculum in place in schools today, because subjects that are taught in depth, like physics and biology, should not happen until the fourth form. Why should I be learning something that is so in-depth? Practical teaching should be done, and only when a child seeks to interest in specialize in that particular area should more in-depth teaching. Can you tell me, Mr. Speaker, that you have ever applied Y equals MX plus C doing day-to-day things? No. Mr. Speaker, I also seek to propose that the VARC questionnaire, which stands for the Visual, Oral, and Read and Write and Kinesthetic Guide to Learning Preferences, be administered upon each child entering secondary school, so that the educator has a comprehensive analysis of the learning style of that student. The opposition also calls for the current dismantling, destruction, getting rid of the disciplinary regime in schools today, and which this resolution has not touched on. Where is the reform for the disciplinary procedures in school? Where is it? How on earth could you as a principal seek to send home a child who acts out in school? Do you think that is the best way to deal with that child? Or what they do, sir, is start them in school and put them into school suspension, give them letters to care about the school, and learn nothing of substance that day. Make it make sense. The opposition proposes that guidance counselors be increased to 2 in each secondary school and have 1 in each primary school, along with implementing a behavior intervention plan made up of best practices. The opposition also called for the formation of primary and secondary student councils. Youth inclusion is much talked about in this country and little to be seen. Students shall have a voice at the table. We get up on TV and we hear the ministers say, oh, they have consulted all the stakeholders, and the decision that it will ultimately affect the students, nothing is said to them. I have not been consulted. Have you been consulted, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want my honourable friends to know that we must aim for our educational system to be good, better, and the best within this modern world. And be assured, this opposition won't rest until such goes. I am obliged to you.
Thank you, member of the opposition. At this point in time, I would like to invite Shakobi Riley. Honourable Minister, you now have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, sir, honourable colleagues, distinguished guests, good afternoon. I rise to speak on this resolution presented. Well, that was the original plan, what was in the resolution. But after hearing most of your presentations, I realize there is a key factor that is missing, and I am actually quite disappointed that it's not spoken about as yet, seeing that we're in a current crisis in this particular industry, and that would be tourism. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I am a tourism guy. Honourable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, please give me a call. Thanks. And with that being said, I see the importance of tourism education. I see the importance of having tourism integrated in our educational system. Now, before I get that deep into the tourism, let me first touch on the integration of soft skills because it all links back. Now, we know what soft skills are, I believe, but for those who don't, by lack of education, I will state emotional intelligence, growth, mindset, ambition, focus, common sense, self-management skills, time management skills, confidence, empathy, and the list goes on. All of these are critical for personal development and to shape a respectful, peaceful, and stable society. Now, jobs, employers are actually seeking potential employees with soft skills. And unfortunately, our schools lack to provide that. They really do. So, and I mean, some of it could be demonstrated here. But this goes into also our customer service here in Barbados. And I know that everybody might not want to touch on this, but I most certainly will. Our customer service in Barbados sucks. It sucks. And tourists may come to Barbados and be like, oh, sun, sea, and sand, and I'm so glad to be here. But it sucks, it really does. The tourists, you only get proper treatment when you see a tourist. And if any of you walk into a store down Swan Street, they're not gonna treat you like how they would treat a tourist, correct? I mean, beat the table if I right, correct? Thank you. That being said, integration of soft skills is especially important in our education system. And that leads me straight into my point in developing tourism education in schools, starting from primary school level. Now, I've read the, what is it? Oh God, no, not the Education Act. The Barbados Tourism, Master Plan, yes, that. And in that speaks to educational tourism and tourism in education. Now, how many of you are aware of the sleeping, I'll call them sleeping, programs that are implemented by the government for tourism education? Thank you, Mr. Howell. Right, not many people are aware of it, but we have STEP, which is School Tourism Education Program, and we have TEAM, which is Tourism, Education, and Me. And these are just two of the programs that are supposed to be active in our schools that are not. Where has it gone? We implemented this in 2011 for 7, my notes all over the place, sorry. 7 secondary schools and 8 primary schools. And I'm not seeing anything happening. It's not there anymore. Why is that? Because we got a system where governments come in and they shelve they shelve programs and they shelve initiatives and they come in with their own plans and they forget about the things that are supposed to help. Beat the table louder. Because what I am speaking...
Continue, Honourable Member.
Pardon me?
Continue.
Okay, thanks. Right, because what I am speaking is facts.
Honourable Member, you have 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you. We stand up here and we conjugate and we talk about all the different things that the education system is missing and what it is not doing, but we neglect the fact that tourism is a huge part to play because where is the majority of our income coming from? The tourism industry. And we do not teach our students enough about it. We're supposed to have this integrated in the social studies. They're supposed to be inclusive of culture and stuff. And what was happening to our Barbadian culture? How many of you in here knows that there's a national dress for our country? It seems like only one person. And that is evident of the failing system. No, it cannot go on. And these programs need to be picked back up and stuff needs to be added. Now, linkages, and it is very, very important to understand that there are linkages to, tourism works on linkage. Tourism works for everybody. And we cannot continue to build a society that decides to put tourism in a box by itself and everything else goes on about its business, because then we have the problem that we have now. Unsustainable. And how do you expect to put the tourism industry in the hands of people that don't know what they are doing? Anybody can answer that? No? Okay then, my point exactly. In here is silent. Absolutely silent. Because it's not being talked about. And everybody overlook it. But it's an important, crucial part of our industry and development as a society. Economically so as well. So
Honourable Member, I'm
implore...
going to ask you to wrap up.
Yes, I will. I would implore that while looking at the education system, that we involve tourism. We don't have to put it at the forefront, but we need to integrate it because it is important. We are a society, we are a country that depends heavily on tourism. And no more can we sit down and say after COVID-19 to put tourism in a box by itself and look at other ways to generate money. It cannot work. It will not work, and I will not stand for it because we need to include tourism. It is an important part of our society, and we need to embrace our culture and not be Americanized. With that, I oblige.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for your remarks. Quite eye-opening. Honourable Member from the government side, Janae Herbert, you now have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, distinguished guests, good afternoon. The good book says there is a time for everything. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, distinguished guests, now is the time for reform, for educational reform. Now is not the time to argue government versus opposition. Now is the time to argue for our youth, for our peers. Now is the time to argue for our future. Because as we speak, Mr. Speaker, time is being wasted, money is being wasted, skills are being wasted. Critical, soft, non-traditional, futuristic skills are being wasted. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, there are students dreading the up-and-coming year. There are students dreading what is to become of this academic year. The system has to change. As we speak, in a predominantly black country, our black boys are still being forced to cut or cover their hair, their precious black hair. Now, Mr. Speaker, I ask that you do not misunderstand me. I am personally a firm believer that every institution must have its rules. But I refuse to stand for texturism on a piece of paper. I refuse to stay silent when I witness and observe that these rules do not apply equally to everybody. Mr. Speaker, the system must change. No, the honorable member called this resolution a disappointment, in short. What was truly disappointing is the obvious lack of thorough analysis. What was disappointing was the obvious lack of empathy, critical thinking, deductive reasoning, and common sense in her speech. These are the things that this resolution seeks to implement in the schools, which is exactly why I urge you, honorable members, to open your eyes and see what this country needs and see what this system needs. We need an educational system, Mr. Speaker, that redefines our country's concept of intelligence, that reconstructs our country's concept of success and what is needed to be successful. We need an educational system that identifies, invests in, and maximizes the potential that I personally believe lies in every single student, in every single one of us. Mr. Speaker, we need an educational system that listens to the wisdom of visionaries. And these visionaries aren't just experts sitting at the top twiddling their thumbs.
Honourable Member, on what point do you raise?
I rise on a point of order. I believe that the honourable member is misleading the House. All I have heard, I'm not sure about y'all, is people bringing solutions to the table and just generally critically thinking about the resolution that was brought from the government and just going through it and saying and pointing out the faults in it as well as giving proper solutions. So I am not really sure where the honourable member is really coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to clarify. The absence of critical thinking and deductive reasoning in particular was in relation to the points made about the resolution. It appears as though the general terms used were not thought about thoroughly, in the sense that when we use vague terms and we use general terms, it is not to create some kind of ambiguity. It is to create umbrella terms that encompass everything. This resolution is based on inclusivity, and its language is also based on such.
Honourable Member, I'll point to your raise.
I rise on a point of order again. The honourable member is misleading the House. It seems to be very confusing to me that she is pointing out the fact that the honourable members or a specific honourable member is being vague when they're speaking, when they're actually speaking about how vague the resolution is. So I'm not really understanding, again, what she's really saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Again, this may be the last time I address your points of order, but my absence and observation of the lack of critical thinking and deductive reasoning was not on the vaguity of your terms, but it was on your failure, on the failure to fully understand and try to look deeper at what the words on this resolution meant. Mr. Speaker, as I was previously saying, we need an educational system that listens to the wisdom of visionaries. And I would have said these visionaries are not just experts sitting at the top twiddling their thumbs. These visionaries are janitors, librarians, teachers, students, people within the system. Mr. Speaker, we need an educational system that understands how precious the art of teaching is and is willing to invest in the proper training and specialization of our teachers. Mr. Speaker, we not only need that, but we also need to make the teaching profession more marketable to those who have a true passion for teaching. Honorable members, finally, I would like to urge you to support the passage of this resolution, because support of this resolution is support for the success of every single student, regardless of age, race, or ability. Support of this resolution, Mr. Speaker, is support for the success of every aspect of our future, because the students of today are the leaders of tomorrow. And on that note, Mr. Speaker, I'm very much obliged.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Madam Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I began this morning, I said that, I was excited to be here, I was happy to be here. And I didn't think that I could have gotten any more happier today, but I actually am. It makes me so happy to be in a room filled with these brilliant minds as we heard their contributions as it relates to this topic that is of high importance in this country. And I think from hearing everyone's contribution, we can come to the conclusion that it's time now for change. Right? I want to say again that education is just not about learning math and English. It goes beyond that. It is about soft skills, learning that soft skills. It teaches us lessons of humanity, It highlights talents and leads to innovation and discoveries. And that is why I need society to stop placing so much emphasis on the school that persons attend. Because the school that you attend does not signal your capabilities.
It is about what you go there and what you do at that school. And I also want us to stop placing so much emphasis on competition against schools in this country, because it is about producing well-rounded citizens. And I will go back to this HFLE program because I am passionate about that. I feel as though that is a tool, a transmission tool, and I keep saying it, because whatever you cannot learn at home because mommy has to work 2 jobs, you must be able to learn at school. And I feel that that program could be so much more than just a free period. When I was going to school, that was a free period, and I'm here to say I don't want that to be a free period, but I want that to be a period where we are teaching our students the necessary skills that they need to function in society. So I will go back to that because it will not directly take away from the syllabus, but it will be a period for us to produce, again, well-rounded citizens. Also in that program, because we are all about persons meeting their full potentials, we're also toying with the idea of, preparing our students with the necessary information needed to take their regulation test, their permit. Because I believe that, persons need to know how to drive, not everybody may have the resources to obtain a vehicle, but if you have that knowledge from school, when you have that chance to go and take your test, it will be much easier for you. Because at the end of the day, again, I will stress that it is about producing well-rounded citizens, and that is why the government is proposing these things. And as time goes on, there will be much more changes, because you cannot find a perfect fit, because times are changing and times will continue to change. But if we are serious that the youth are the future of this country, we have to start equipping them with the necessary knowledge needed. Right now, we're trying to fight for reparatory justice. A lot of persons don't even know what reparations is. Personally, for me, I took history, and the first time I heard the word reparations was last year, and then I had to, educate myself. And these are things that we need to start teaching our young people from the grassroots level, because in order for us to go forward, we must know about the past so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. So, Mr. Speaker, at this time, I beg to move this resolution. Beg to move that this resolution do not pass. Sorry.
I second this motion.
The question is that this resolution be passed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. The resolution will now stand passed. Leader of the opposition, you now have the floor.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to reserve my right to speak and move the vote of thanks.
Permission granted.
I want to thank everyone for coming today, especially those in the public gallery, whether it be from tertiary, secondary, or primary education, sir. I also want to thank the opposition for not providing any knee-jerk solutions, but properly thought out, critically thought out, and meticulously thought out solutions here today, including more social workers, more guidance counselors, and our advisor on finance for how this venture should be funded. And sir, as we prepare our children for the world of today, we cannot forget to mention not only their e-readiness, but also their work readiness. And sir, in a world where contracts are the thing of today, we need to educate our children also in schools about what to expect in this world of contracts, sir. As when you go for a mortgage or a loan, sir, contracts aren't really viable. The youth are crying out for the financial institutions and employers, sir, to come together to instill some kind of a clause rather than getting 3 month and 6 months contracts to say, well, this is a 5-year contract and it will be reviewed every 6 months or so. And this is another way in which we can include in our educational system, sir, how we go forward, how we proceed, and this is what the youth of today want. And sir, I want to thank the Ministry of Youth, Sport, and Community Empowerment for providing this debate for us, providing all the sessions. I want to thank the Ministry of Education, sir, for the continued education that we get, the government of the day for the continued free education, and everyone else who made today possible, including you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to a signed day.
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Leader of Government Business. At this point in time, I do share the sentiments of the Prime Minister and the Opposition Leader. This has been an enriching experience. Filling this role as Speaker is not one that he took lightly, and I am overwhelmed at how eloquently, how articulately we each presented our arguments and our cases, whether for or against. I applaud the level of camaraderie from either side of this chamber. It was incredible. I thank you, and I look forward to continuously being present as we engage in further discourse on this particular issue on education and further matters that affect the youth. At this point in time, I would like to... The question is, the House is adjourned. My apologies.
I second that.
Thank you. Greatly appreciated. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. I believe the ayes have it. The session is now adjourned.